All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of The Real Review. My name is Kevin.
And I'm John.
And we are the Real Movie Guys. On today's episode, we'll be reviewing Southpaw. Southpaw is about a champion boxer who fights to get his daughter back from Child Protective Services, as well as revive his professional career after a fatal incident sends him on a rampant path of destruction. And as always, spoilers will follow in this review, so if that's something you would like to avoid, we do recommend pausing the video, checking out the movie, then coming back to hang with us. Or if you don't care, hey, it's good to have you here. So, John, with all that being said, this movie came out in 2015. I know we're a little late to the party. Did you know anything about this movie going into it? Any did you hear about it? Or we talked earlier. I know you had the soundtrack. You said you bought the soundtrack. So did you have any other inkling? Know anything about this movie?
No, I kind of just thought it was gonna be like based off another Rocky movie, but kind of more of as like a serious storyline than that.
Yeah.
But that's really all I knew.
Right.
But it's just listening to I feel like the soundtrack came out before the movie too.
It probably
and
did.
I felt like the soundtrack was just good enough listening to it that I was like, kind of got you hyped for the movie.
Yeah, right. So a little behind the scenes stuff with this movie. Originally, this movie was supposed to star Eminem till he pulled out last minute when he wanted to focus more on his rap career, which I guess was for the best. I'm not a music buff, but Eminem's pretty good, and he has a song in the movie, so I guess there was no hard feelings. After Eminem pulled out, they ended up getting Jake Gyllenhaal, who I love. Jake Gyllenhaal is amazing, and there's no doubt about that he's the best thing in this movie. This movie's also written by Kurt Sutter. For those who don't know, Kurt Sutter is the writer of the very popular, famous at this point show Sons of Anarchy. This was one of his bigger breakthroughs into Hollywood. I know there's been a couple other movies, but I think this was really hyped up. He wasn't the director. The director is actually Antoine Fuqua, who did Training Day. But again, Kurt Sutter writing this, I know that was a big deal. People were hyping that up as something to be excited for. Now, John, you're a big fan of Sons of Anarchy. We both are, but I know you especially were a huge fan of that show. Did you notice a lot of similarities in the writing style between the two, or?
I mean, I noticed some little things here and there that was kind of seemed very familiar from just watching the show for such a long time,
right?
And it being on the air and just being really into it. I noticed a couple things here and there from it, but it wasn't too much. Sure.
I think there's a lot of similarities that we can talk about, but we'll get into that a little bit later. So the first thing I really want to start with is with the performances. Honestly, Jake Gyllenhaal just blows my mind every movie he's in, because he may not be his best performance, but he's the best performance in the movie. Physically, the man altered his body. The guy's built like an Adonis in this movie. He's huge, considering how small he was prior. I think it was Nightcrawler. I could be wrong, was either before or after this. So the changes in shape are just dramatic, ridiculously dramatic. But not even that. I think he really captures the light and dark of the character. His happiest moments, yet his darkest moments, are captured fantastically. There's a scene in particular I really do love, is when he's contemplating suicide. He has his hand on the bed and there's the gun and he's not sure what he wants to do. He ends up not killing himself. He ends up actually trying to go after the person that did, kill his wife. John, what did you think of his performance in this movie?
I thought his performance in this movie was really good. I thought he portrayed the character in a very real way.
Mm-hmm.
He made you feel what the character was going through,
right?
With the fact of him losing his wife,
mm-hmm.
and him having his daughter then taken away too.
Yeah,
how much struggle people go through.
Yeah,
all through that.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, his performance is just so strong there. The courtroom scene when they take his daughter away. After you seeing all the tragedy he's gone through at this point, his wife was murdered in front of him. His career's going down the toilet essentially because he's not fighting. It's crazy. Even a more powerful scene is when it's the second fight in the movie where he's fighting, his championship is up on the line, and he just puts his hands down. They're fighting, him and the other boxer, and you can tell he's just given up on life. And he puts his hands down almost as if he wants to die in the ring. And I thought that was crazy. Like, just from a performance. I mean, again, maybe it wasn't much a vocal performance, but what he gave off visually, I thought was really impressive for that scene.
Yeah, I agree. That was a really good scene.
Yeah.
It was like It was also crazy just how much good of in shape he got for the movie, especially he seemed like he was in great boxing shape too.
Yeah, which is impressive. I mean, we've seen quite a few boxing movies. I mean, you have your Raging Bull, the whole Rocky series, Creed, which is an extension of the Rocky series. I think this movie held up as well, with its action pacing that way. I felt like it was very true boxing scenarios, I would say.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. All right, what else did you think? Now, what did you think of Forrest Whitaker in this movie? Forrest Whitaker plays the trainer, essentially Jake Gyllenhaal after he's, pretty much his life screwed up. He doesn't have his daughter. He's trying to get trained again because he wants to fight again, and he finds Forrest Whitaker. John, what did you think of Forrest Whitaker in this movie playing the trainer?
I think he did a pretty good job as a trainer.
Mm-hmm.
I think he came off well too.
Right.
But I don't think it was like. I feel like he's got so overshadowed by Jake Gyllenhaal's performance.
Right, I could see that.
In a way.
Right. Yeah, I see what you're
that
saying.
Every time they were on the screen together, it seemed like Gyllenhaal was like more of the thing.
It's tough because I don't want to say Forrest Whitaker's sleepwalking through the role, because he's not. I think he's giving a solid performance. I think it's like what you said. I think Jake Gyllenhaal is such a strong actor that we forget he's there. He just doesn't come off as impressive as Jake Gyllenhaal. I guess that's what it is. I don't know if you would agree with that. I feel like that's where I'm coming from with that.
I agree with that.
Right. So we have those two are pretty much the main characters. The other couple characters I want to just real quick talk about. Rachel McAdams plays his wife. We don't spend much time with her because she is murdered relatively early in the movie, I would say. Probably within the first 30 minutes. That sounds about right. About the first 30 minutes. Even though she's not in it that long, I think she plays a really important part because she has to be extremely likable. And she is.
Yeah.
She is. Because she has to be so likable that him losing her has to affect us as the audience, which I think it does. Seeing their relationship, seeing the time that they spent together. I didn't need a big, long, explanation as to what the relationship's about. I got that from her performance, just the way they interacted. So I think Rachel McAdams, again, very likable in general. I think that was a great choice to play his wife. The daughter, I thought, did really well. I think it's Ona Lawrence, I believe is how you say it. I could be butchering it. Child actors are hit or miss. I think she was solid. I wouldn't say she was above average, but she had definitely some great scenes. She was really able to portray the vulnerability of losing her mother, I thought. Especially there's a scene where Jake Gyllenhaal goes to visit her, and at this point he's like a little bit, sobered up. His, career's getting back on track. He's about to do a charity fight, and he tells her that he still can't see her for another 30 days, and she just freaks out and she smacks him across the face, and that was really powerful. I thought, I'm like, that's a really good scene. The two of them, Jake Gyllenhaal working off of her and vice versa, I thought was really good.
Yeah, I agree. I thought that the wife scenes were very important to the movie too.
Yeah.
I felt that she also played it very well.
Right.
And she kind of made you you kind of wanted more of that character.
Mm-hmm.
But since she went so fast, you kind of in a way felt like for how long they've been together too, in a way.
Right. I mean, would you argue you almost relate to him in a way, like, oh man, we lost this person too soon a little bit.
Yeah, definitely.
No, I could see that for sure. Last actor we'll talk about real quick. 50 Cent's in the movie. He's in it.
That's it.
Nothing against 50 Cent. I think he is a decent actor. He was okay. He was just in it. He plays the generic, like, I'm your promoter, and then suddenly I'm the bad guy, good guy, bad guy, not sure what side I'm on, kind of deal.
Yeah, he was on the money side.
Yeah, it was nothing original. So unfortunately, he's in it. That's all I can say. Yeah. It's star power. I think that's really about it for him. Other things we could talk about. We talked about it briefly before. The cinematography, I think, is great in this movie. Antoine Fuqua, he does a really good job with cinematography, capturing those gritty, real moments. as much as I'm not a huge fan of Training Day, I can appreciate the cinematography in that movie, and it definitely shows through with this film. Like you said, the boxing matches, I think, especially the opening scene of this movie, is fantastic. When they're when they're taping up his gloves, it's like a slow, methodical process in the beginning of the movie, but you get insight into the boxer's mind. I think that's great. I really like that, and then seeing him get into the ring, and uh, it was really well done. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I agree. I feel like the boxing was done well in the movie. They
Mm-hmm.
portrayed it in a good way.
Right.
They didn't make it look like it was cheaply done. They made it. I feel like they did it better. Like some of the fights were better than some other ones I've seen,
Right.
but I feel like they did it realistically.
Right, and like I said, I think like the beginning, him taping up the gloves slowly, showing the process, them coming in, signing off on the gloves and stuff, like signing off on the tape, making sure everything was taped correctly. That was kind of cool. I don't think we've ever seen that really in a movie before. At least another boxing movie I could think of. I haven't seen that process shown before, so that was kind of cool. And like you said, some are better than others. I would argue maybe the last one wasn't done that well. It felt a little hokey to me. The last fight. It used a
Yeah,
lot of like cheaper camera angles and stuff like that. So I don't know what happened. I don't know if they felt uninspired towards the end of the movie, which is ironic because that's when you're supposed to be the most inspirational. But again, I felt like that was cheaper. They were using like more like TV footage and those kind of quick
yeah,
camera cuts, and I don't know. It took away from it. I would have liked something a little more cinematic at that point. I think.
yeah. They fell out of the ring with that one.
Yeah, that was good. That was good. Anyway, so going on, the soundtrack. Now, John, I know you really like this. What did you like about this soundtrack? I know you were really big on this soundtrack.
I feel like the soundtrack was just all around good. Like
Right,
it, while watching the movie, it got you even more into the movie than you really were.
right,
And with each, I feel like with each song too, it was like perfectly placed inside the movie.
right.
And it's just one of those soundtracks that like usually you get a soundtrack and there's like 2 to 3 good songs on it. But
Yeah.
I feel like this one had a lot more than that. And this one, not only did it help out the movie a lot, but it's just a good soundtrack by itself.
No, I mean I agree. I mean the soundtrack. I like a lot of the artists that were on the soundtrack, of course, just from the vocal points. But even the score itself was performed by the late James Horner, who actually died in a plane crash prior to this movie. He did a lot of other great films as well. But yeah, the soundtrack from Horner was great. I really thought, like you said, it had that hip hop feel to it, but it wasn't too over the top. It was kind of a nice balance between the classic like Rocky esque soundtrack with more of a hip hop vibe to it. Like I would say comparative to the Creed soundtrack, I would say, but Creed was more like I would say like compared to like dipping your toe in the pool. Like this movie like dipped its toe in the pool as far as like the hip hop, but then Creed like went all the way in and like put the whole leg in essentially. That's what I would compare it to, but I really liked it. Like I said, it's great. It's even hell. I would recommend picking it up even at this point. It's still a great listen. You know what I mean? The
Yeah.
tracks are still good. Um, the last thing I'll talk about as far as positives is I think just in general that the storyline of the wife dying and losing, him losing his daughter was different, and I really do appreciate that. Uh, Based on everything else it does, which we'll get into, but I think that uniqueness to the storyline was really interesting. John, what did you think that was unique, or we don't really see that too much in a realistic like showing, semi-realistic, I guess you could argue, of like child protective services and whatnot, and especially in a sports movie. I feel like,
Yeah, I think it was a good, like a good draw into it
yeah,
too.
it was different, a
It,
different draw, I would say.
yeah, it gave you enough to where it gave you more to like think about during the movie too.
Right?
Like
No, I
a
agree.
different like plot too into it.
No, it was definitely interesting. So that being said, we have to get into some negatives. Unfortunately, in my opinion, uh, as much as that's unique and different, the rest of this movie's not different at all. Um, I felt like, honestly, and I'll be 100% real with everybody, which, we are the real movie guys, 100% real with you, I thought I was watching a Rocky remake at times. Like, literally, beat for beat, it was like carbon copied.
Yeah, like a
Uh,
boxer that just doesn't know how to punch again. It
Is to
seems to
learn
be
how to
one
fight
thing.
again.
Well, yeah, it seems to be one thing in like a lot of boxing movies that
Right.
like it's never like about a boxer like say a
Right.
Floyd Mayweather who's like very like defensive or
Right.
like very swift. It's always about someone who's getting the crap beat out of them in the beginning and always getting beat up. It's never like, oh, we just had a fight where we took a
Hmm.
little bit of damage. Every guy is always bloody after it.
Well, here's my problem. All right. Well, let's dig into this. My real big problem is, like I said, it's a carbon copy of Rocky at times. I mean, you have Mick. I think sorry, Forrest Whitaker's character is called Tick. Mick and Tick?
Hey,
Are you
hey, we got
kidding?
Mick and Tick, man.
Are you
Come
kidding
on.
me? I mean, the whole like you're a bum. I don't want to train. Essentially, that's what that was, right? Are we arguing that
You're a
that's different?
bum rock.
Uh, again, losing the wife was different, which I give it praise for. The daughter to be taken away, totally different. After we get to that point, it's Rocky. It's Rocky 3, essentially. Rocky 3 loses his, fame. Same thing. The training montage. He was jumping rope just like they do in Rocky. Almost exactly the shot, exactly the same. Doing the punching bag, exactly the same.
Yeah, but he wasn't out. He wasn't out there chopping wood in the snow, man.
No, I mean, he wasn't fighting. What's his name? Mr. T.
Drago.
No, Mr. T. He's fighting Mr.
Oh.
T. Yeah, he's fighting his version of Mr. T. And not even that. Even the end fight was so uninspiring to me, which is a shame. He gets cut right above the eye, like in Rocky, exactly the same. He has to switch his stance to be a southpaw, or from a southpaw to a regular. Or no, this one he becomes a southpaw. He changes over, which really isn't made that big of a deal earlier on. It's kind of hinted. It's not even really hinted at. It's just kind of random. Like be a southpaw.
Yeah.
Be a southpaw now. Eat lightning and crap thunder. I was like waiting for that line to come at me. The script, it was just so formulaic, to the
They cut
happy
that out of the
ending.
movie.
And there's nothing wrong with a happy ending. Don't get me wrong, but don't carbon copy Rocky. It was literally the same thing. It really was, and I've seen it done much better. As good as Jake Gyllenhaal is, as great as Jake Gyllenhaal is, he's not better than like the previous Rocky movie. You can't outshadow that. It's been done before. And
yeah, he's no Sly Stallone.
no, and Southpaw is just living in the shadow of those movies. It can't get out of it. It at times I think it's elevated a bit by the director to almost get there, especially with this story, but it's too afraid. It's like, no, let's just be Rocky. That works. That's fine. That's fine. We're done. Let's just be Rocky. Even the sleazy 50 Cent, right? It was that Rocky 5. He has the promoter the same thing. It's literally the same thing. We're just taking things from better movies. We're taking all the Rocky movies, picking and choosing little bits and pieces, and putting it in this movie.
Yeah. Could you imagine seeing the uncut version of this movie?
Right? No, it's a shame.
They would put Rocky in it.
And so not even that. We get into other things. I think the dialogue's a little wonky at times, which comes from, I think, the script being just so weak. I do like Kurt Sutter. Don't get me wrong. I love Sons of Anarchy. I think that's great. You can argue to the fact that his work isn't always the most original in stories. Even Sons of Anarchy, to a point, is pretty much the retelling of Hamlet. It is Hamlet, essentially. He pretty much flat out says it's Hamlet. So I feel like he watched Rocky and said, I could do that too, man. That's really cool. I could do that. And then he wrote a script about it, and that's what we got, essentially. Some of the dialogue's just so forced. Like I said, you're a southpaw. You're a southpaw. Be that. Go southpaw on him. Just so fake. I'm sorry. I wasn't feeling it. And even Jake Gyllenhaal had some corny lines, and I'm sorry. It was just, the script was just so weak. I wanted it to be stronger. I don't know if you feel the same way. That's how I feel about the script, at least.
No, I tend to agree with you.
And again, the worst part is it's almost like a comic. It became a comedy almost towards the end for me. I hate to be that bad, because it felt like Rocky. I'm sorry. It was like I'm like, wait, are we a Rocky remake? Is that what this was? This was like a secret.
Wait.
You didn't tell me.
Well, you didn't hear him yell out at the end, "Yo, Adrian!"
I mean, he might as well have, right? I mean, his daughter was watching. She just wasn't there, but she was in another room. It was like the same difference. I don't know. Like I said, it was just there was some shenanigans with that, and unfortunately, I think that really hurt the movie. So with that being said, John, do you have any other final thoughts on this film?
No, I think we covered them all.
Yeah,
Really?
yeah. It's just a shame. It dances around greatness. This movie. It had a chance. Uh, I don't know what. I think the script and the material was just too weak. I think all the other moving parts worked. It's just they couldn't get over that hurdle.
Yeah.
Jake Gyllenhaal is great. No doubt about it, but not enough for me. So. What I'm going to do is, at this point, we're at the point of the video where we give our final scores. For Southpaw, I'm going to give Southpaw a C+. Again, Southpaw, it had potential for me. Wasn't the worst thing I watched. I enjoyed it decently enough. I think most sports fans will enjoy this movie. There's no doubt about that. If you're a sports fan, especially a boxing fan, you'll get some enjoyment out of this movie. As far as being an elevated film above anything else you've seen boxing-wise, even MMA-wise, I think Warrior was even a better movie than this. We didn't even talk about that, but again, if you're into boxing, this is a good movie to watch. It's enjoyable, especially just for Jake Gyllenhaal's performance. I recommend it. I do recommend it. Just keep in mind, it's not the best thing you're going to see. John, where do you fall in this movie?
Yeah, and at the end of the day, when the bell rings, I'd give this movie a C+.
Ooh, I like what you did there.
I feel like the exact same way you do with the
Right.
movie, and like I mean, it was enjoyable when I watched it,
Mm-hmm.
but it's nothing that I'm gonna like write home about. But it was
It was a good one-time
a good
watch,
movie.
right?
It was a good movie for what it was. Yeah.
You know what it was? I would compare it to this for anyone. Well, if it was on TV, check it out. If you still watch if you still watch cable, if this was on like FX or something like that, I'd leave it on. Leave it on in the background. If it came on Netflix, I guess I'd recommend checking it out. You're not losing anything. Going out of your way beyond that, not necessary. Good performances. Good directing. Everything else, I think we both agree was a little bit lackluster for us at this point.
Definitely.
So, John, where can the people find us at home?
You can find us. Well, if you're listening now, you're listening to us probably on YouTube. You can find us at The Real Movie Guys on YouTube. You can also find us on Twitter at The Real Movie Guy. You can tweet at us, hit us up. We'll try to respond back to you the best we can. And you can also find us on many, many podcast forms.
Yes. For your listening pleasure, we are also available in podcast form at iTunes, Spotify, Anchor, Google Podcasts, Breaker, Radio Public, and Pocket Casts. Be sure to give us a listen at any of those fine places. If you are already now, we do greatly appreciate it. Just search The Real Movie Guys. We'll pop right up. I'd like to thank all of you for joining us for this video, this episode of The Real Review. My name's Kevin. That guy over there, his name's John. We are The Real Movie Guys. Real guys, real movies, real thoughts. We'll see you next time.
See ya!